Alright, I finally figured out a jaw setup that I'm not completely despising, so I just wanted to show you guys that. So my jaw is set up with basically, I should probably find the head. The jaw is set up so that there's a little ball joint just clipping through the head. I got really lazy. And then going into the side of this jaw. So basically what I wanted is to be able to move this up and down, and to also sort of like wiggle the jaw, not only up and down, but sort of like side to side a little bit. I don't know why, it just seemed like a great idea or something. So basically what I need for this is this little thing to stay in the head, but also sort of move and like point towards the back of this jaw. And you can see that I was playing with this for longer than I should have, but you can see I've sort of set up something, and it's not great, because like obviously you can rotate the jaw really, really far, and that will just straight up disconnect. But it sort of does, you know, what you need it to do. I'm sure I could set this up a little bit neater, but I just sort of wanted to show you guys what I did in case it is somehow helpful to you guys. So the first thing, I guess, is the joint setup. So I have one giant jaw joint just chilling in the middle of the head. This is what my jaw is attached to. And I have two joints on each side of the head coming out from that. So I have one in the center of this little pivot thingy, and another one in the center, the other side of this little pivot thingy. So the outer one is just sort of what I'm attaching the jaw to, and the middle one is, if I rotate that, that's what's going to move this little booger thing. So I have the same thing, again, set up on both sides of the head. And effectively what I've done is I've taken the jaw, constrained it to this giant joint, and grabbed this sort of large jaw control here, and used an orient constraint to drive this, again, this giant joint in the middle of the head. So this will get me basically rotation just straight up and down. I can also go through, and again, just rotate it like this. And you can see these little joints are like more or less following it. So effectively what I've done is I knew, like, basically this should always be pointing at this joint. So I literally went through and I set up an aim constraint. I grabbed this joint and then this joint, and I was like, constrain, aim. And basically what that's going to do is going to always follow this joint. So you'll notice, like, as I rotate this joint moves up, and this little thing is always going to be pointing at that joint. So it might clip through it, it might, you know, be stretching to reach it, but it will always be pointing in that general direction. That's honestly the basic setup for this. It's nothing like super insanely fancy. The only reason that I actually needed these joints here was the aim constraint. So there's nothing bound to them, I just needed something to be physically present there, locked onto basically each side of the jaw, so that when I move this main joint here, it travels along with it and again provides something to point at. In terms of the controls, I already mentioned this giant one. This pretty much just is only there to really drive the big thing in the center of the head. And then I have these itty bitty little controls here, and this would be if I need to do anything manual with the little bolts in the side for some reason. Probably barely ever going to use them, but they do exist if I need them. And if you find them in the outliner, so you'll notice that here's the control. I do have this in a little group, and what I've done is I have taken this joint and actually aim constrained it to the group holding this control. So by doing that, you'll notice, like, if I do that, the control is going to sort of move and also point at the joint, but I still, if I need to, can go in and modify this control manually. If I had just constrained the control directly to, I'm sorry, if I constrained the control directly, I wouldn't be able to go in and like manually edit this. And I always like the editability. Again, it takes 10 extra seconds to set up a group and just sort of like pop that in there. That's basically all I did. Then I just sort of went through, you'll notice I actually did not parent, like if I move this jaw, these controllers stay where they are. That was intentional. They are supposed to be controlling those little pieces on the side of the head. Had I gone through and like taken, I want the group. Had I parented this under the jaw, nothing great would happen here. It would just take the joints and behave as one single piece. So that's why I set that up that way. And then everything is pretty much just tacked into the head control. So I have the head, the jaw, and then all the little jaw controls just chilling there. So I don't know if that's helpful. It was not a super detailed walkthrough, but that's pretty much what I did. The only other thing I did and also just to avoid confusion, when I said earlier I grabbed this this joint and constrained it to this joint with an aim constraint, I didn't actually constrain the joint, I was constraining the controller itself. It functions pretty much the same. The other thing I did do is add a... so I have an orient constraint actually going from this controller to this joint, as well as a point constraint. I could have done a parent constraint, but I set them up in different times and I was lazy. But this point constraint, like if I get rid of this, is basically just doing this. So it'll hold this little ball joint actually on the controller so it doesn't flop around with the rest of the body, since, like, remember, like, this is connected to this. So if I rotate this up, it's going to take this unless something there is stopping it, and that is this point constraint. And you can see now it sort of stays where it is. So if there's any soft skin on this, this would actually, like, the length of this joint going to this little guy here, it's actually not really changing, just because of sort of how this is set up, but it is, you know, if I did choose to move this like this, and you had something soft skin bound onto this, it would actually stretch that skin. So depending on whether or not that's what you want, you know, just something to be aware of. But yeah, that's my really goofy little jaw setup.